right, good morning, everybody. My name is Matt. I'm the lead pastor here at LifeHouse, and I'm so glad to see all of you. I've already met a few new people this morning, so it was great to meet you. If you are new here and you want to let us know that you're here when you're ready, hey, we'd love to meet you. You can do that by taking the QR code in front of you. There's a new button once you click on that, or let someone out in the lobby or online in the link know you're here. We just love to meet you when you're ready to do that. Hey, a couple pieces of information I love for you to know, because this is a really busy time in our world and our church. Next Saturday, we are launching what we call a short-term men's group. It's a 3-week group on Saturday morning, and if you're a man in this place or online, we would love for you just to be a part of that. You can do that by clicking on the app with that also. It is worth your effort and time, and there's some great dudes that will be hanging out just for 3 weeks on Saturday, starting next Saturday, so keep that in mind. And I want to let you know that next Sunday is what we're calling our big Fall Fest here at LifeHouse. The kids are going to get to wear their costumes in their environments, and that's a lot of fun. We're going to have some special snacks and treats out in the lobby, and we're going to start out with a really cool song in this environment. And I'm launching a brand new series that answers some of life's harder questions when it comes to faith, and maybe that alone would engage you to invite someone, because we love to invite people to our church because we think it's a great experience, and it helps them maybe start a path towards faith. So again, if you're new, we're glad hopefully someone invited you today. For today, as I said, we're going to be here about an hour, so set your watches, men and women too, but men always want to know how long is it going to be. We're going to be here about an hour. We're going to sing a couple songs, and then we had the privilege of witnessing a baptism. And if you've never seen an adult baptism, it's one of our favorite things. Stephanie Wells is getting baptized. Stephanie's right over here. Let's give it up for Steph. Cannot wait, Steph. Hey, and the reason why this is such a big deal is because Stephanie is going public with her faith. She's just sharing what God has done in her life. So when she gets baptized, as you all know, cheer and root and scream and all you can for her, because we're so excited for what God's done in her life. And then I'll wrap up our series, Distractions today, and get you on your way. We're so glad that you chose to spend the next hour or so with us. I'm going to invite you to stand up and let's sing our first song together.
Would welcome me. I was lost, but he brought me. Oh, his love for me. Oh, his love for me. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, while I was a slave.
I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. Oh, I am who you say I am. Yes, I am who you say I am. Who the Son sets free, going free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I
All these pieces broken and scattered, in mercy gathered, mended and whole, empty-handed but not forsaken. I've been set free. I've been set free. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Oh, I once was lost, but now I am found. Was blind, but now I see. Oh, I can see you now. Oh, I can see the love in your eyes, laying yourself down, raising up the broken to You take our failure, you take our weakness, you set your treasure in jars of clay. So take this heart, Lord, and I'll be your vessel, the world to see your life in me. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Oh, I once was lost, much for singing with us this morning. You may have your seat. Like Matt said earlier, we get to witness a beautiful baptism this morning. My good friend Stephanie. Love you, Stephanie. And we get to be a part of it. So if you will turn your eyes to the screen, and we'll get to see her story and then take part in her baptism. Bless you.
Hi, my name is Stephanie, and I was fortunate enough to grow up with people in my life that helped me build a good Christian foundation. And they taught me that Jesus loves me, he's for me. But you know, you go through high school, middle school, times get tough, and it's not like, I wouldn't say I stepped away from faith, but it was more like just a stagnant feeling. Fast forward quite a few years and met my husband, Brian, 2001. We got married in 2005, had our first kid in 2009, our second kid in 2012, and that completed our nice small little family. And the people that were watching our kids at the time invited them into church. We decided to, let's check it out. Because they had came here, they wanted to come back, they wanted to bring us with them, so we came. It was Easter Sunday. The series that was going on was just more like Matt was talking to me, started getting into like the short-term groups, and then I got into a community group, and it made me realize that the groups, it's not just just getting together every week. It's just, life. Talk about life. Talk about what's happening. It's intentionally filling up your cup so you can pour into others. That's just kind of what led me to here. And I was like, why not? Why not take this step? I would like to thank Brian for just being there with me through everything, the good and the bad. I won't want to do life with anybody else. Hi, my name is Stephanie Wells, and I'm here today to say that Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior.
Stephanie, in your story, you shared about how as a child you learned about Jesus and faith in him. And later in life, through an intentional invite, you found your way here at LifeHouse. And not only did you just start attending LifeHouse, but you jumped right in and you started serving. And through another intentional invite, you joined a group. And through groups, you realize that it's an opportunity to grow and to be able to share with others. And because of your proclamation of faith, I baptize you in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Congratulations. Thank you.
So good. You all can have a seat. I'm going to get ahead of myself in just a second. We're going to talk about our great work as human beings that God has put us on this planet for. But I will tell you, the church that you attend, if this is your church, and if you're visiting, I just hope you're having a great experience. That's our great work. That some of you would be invited that's not sure where things are. And this is a story we hear over and over and over again. That somebody would be invited, they would come and they would have that aha moment. And sometimes that aha moment takes a little while. You listen and you think and you pray. And then for many of us, it was like, oh, I think I believe in a God that loves me. And then that person, gets involved, gets in a group, starts to lean into their faith, and one day they realize, I'm a committed follower of Jesus, and I want to get baptized, and tell everybody, I'm a committed follower of Jesus. And it's a holistic viewpoint of how we do church. It's the invitation. And if you're online, maybe you're just online today because you wanted to see what this thing was all about in this crazy church we started so long ago. As if you're here, you're like, yeah, this is something. And it's an invitation to take a step in God's direction and then to grow for all of us in our faith. And I just want you to know that's what we do this whole thing for. That's why we serve, we give, we love, we invite, and we're part of groups. And why we have decided to be more intentional in the last couple years about how do we impact the community outside of the walls of LifeHouse. And you may know this, but if you're new, we have this thing we do every year. It's called Be Rich. It's something for the students in our community. And I just want to explain it to you if you're new. There's 4 schools that we're going to serve in a couple weeks: Wayne Trace, Crestview, Lincoln View, and Van Wert. And we're going to take about 125, will probably be about 140 kids shopping for 2 hours. We're going to pair each one of them up with one of the people from our church, and they're gonna go shopping for some basic needs, because there's some kids that have basic needs. And when I say basic needs, I don't mean video games and basketballs. I mean literally shoes and socks and pillowcases. And we're just gonna love on kids all Saturday afternoon in just a couple of weeks. And I just wanted to give you an update where we're at. A lot of you have signed up to serve that day, and I'm so grateful. We still need people to go shopping. And men, we need some of you to go shopping. And I know it's like, oh, that feels like it's gonna stretch me. Yep, it'll stretch you, but you'll be glad you did, and it will be worth it. So I would love for you to think about signing up to serve on the day for the students event. You can do that through your app. You can do that if you tell somebody out in the lobby at the guest services and online, there's a link. The other part of this is we've been raising a lot of money, and we actually raised money for 3 things for this. One was just to cover the cost of shopping for that day in a couple of weeks. And we said we need to raise at least $35,000. I don't even want you to clap for this because you know you already have. So you don't need to clap. Don't clap. I know we'll clap for something in a couple of weeks that will be much bigger. And we covered that literally almost in the first week. But here's the thing for LifeHouse, you know this, we're not a church that just covers things. We're a church that goes beyond with our generosity, and you guys are doing that. But because there's an added school and we're giving 20% of everything we take in away to go down south to help recovery from the hurricane, we need to raise more than we ever have. And last year I told you we raised $70,000, and we're getting there, but I would love to encourage you to engage in that. And the reason that's so beneficial for the schools in our area is we'll take those kids shopping, and this is really important, but the rest of the money that we raise, that we don't spend on that shopping day, goes into what's called a student need fund. And it's a student need fund that is still being spent from last year's Be Rich, because the school systems literally do not have a fund for personal needs for kids. So teachers are pulling out their own wallets and writing their own checks and their own credit cards to get kids some necessities. And just a week ago, Tina told you this last week, there was a house fire and a family lost everything. And the school dipped into the money you gave from a year ago to help provide for that family's needs, because there was no other money for them other than the money that you raised last year. And so this is what I'd love for you to do. I'd love for you to think about 2 things. How can I serve, especially shopping with a student, but can I decide to be generous? Maybe past where I've ever been generous towards what we're trying to accomplish. And if you're visiting here, I'd love for you to participate, because, listen, all of it's going to the kids. None of it's staying here. None of it pays for the lights and the staff at LifeHouse. We're just giving it all the way to the kids, and 20% to the people down in the hurricane ravaged area in the south. And we're just gonna be really generous, and we're gonna celebrate that. And here's my invitation. Actually, it starts with a thank you. For those of you that are already been good at being generous, consistently to LifeHouse, thank you. If you've been generous to Be Rich and for the students, thank you. And I didn't know if I was gonna say it, but I'm gonna say it. If this is your church and you have never engaged in something at your church that you seem to like, I would love for you to engage, because the church is best when we engage, and your best church experience is when you engage, and you have a chance to engage by serving and being generous and helping us write some big checks to some kids. I mean, some kids that really need it. And we're going to be generous and show them what God's love looks like in our own little corner of the world. Thank you all for being rich. I can't wait to share the results with you in just a week or so. Thanks for being here this morning. Yeah, well, I'm back. I feel like every time I talk in the middle of the service, they play that, and then I'm back. It's like you were looking for someone better looking to show up after that. Anyway, so yeah, here's what I want to do. We're wrapping up our series today. It's called Fatal Distractions. Y'all heard from Joel last week. He did a great job, and he used a board he drew on. I'm not doing that today because I can't draw. But what I'd love for everybody in the room and online, if you want to play along, is to take out your phone real quick. We're going to do an experiment. I promise you don't have to sign up for anything. There's no QR codes. Hey, just a heads up, if you have to flip open your phone, this is not gonna work. I apologize, it's not gonna work. But here's what I want you to do. Do that thing, and I'll see if I can do it on my phone, where you pull up the apps, don't do it yet, but pull up the apps where you delete them or get them, shut them down. You know what I'm talking about? I know how that works for an iPhone. For you godless Android users, I don't know how that works for you all. You're messing our whole lives up, people, I'm telling you. And right now, I want you to start closing the apps and counting them. Go ahead, do that. Close your apps and count them as you close them. I'm two apps deep. Close them, and somebody raise your hand when you're done. Raise your hand, somebody show me when you're done. All right, you guys have less than 5 apps open. Yes. All right, put your hands down. I messed that up. If you have less than 5 apps open, raise your hand. Okay, put your hands down. If you have more than 5 apps open, raise your hand. Keep them up. If you have more than 10 apps open, keep them up. 20 apps open, if you have more than 20. Anybody? Oh, yeah. I'm not picking on you, Kate, but I see your hand. Some of you are still counting right now. If you have more than 30 apps open, keep your hand raised. All right, 40, 50. Psychologists will be in the lobby after the service. I'm just gonna give you a tip about your phone, and I'm no tech guy, but here's a tip about your phone. The more apps you have open, the less productive your phone is. Did you know that? And the more apps you have open, the more it wears down your battery, and you probably know this, but for those of you that have 50 apps open, I literally feel like I'm talking to my mom. Mom, close your apps, please. But here's what's interesting, and you all know this. The more apps you have open in your life, the less productive you are and the more your battery drains. The more distractions, the more activities that are not needed, unimportant things drain you and help you lose focus. Studies have shown that people that are distracted by too many things in their life are not as productive and do not perform as well in life, because it's an opportunity for this word distraction. And that's what distraction means. It's a disengagement from having traction in our lives. To focus on what's important and what matters. And this might be a distraction from your family. It might be a distraction from the business you're trying to grow. It can be a distraction in government, and it certainly can be a distraction in church. And what happens when we're distracted, we are not focused on the great work that God has called us to do, which Joel introduced to you last week, the idea of a great work that you were created for. Last week, Joel introduced the character Nehemiah, who was an Israelite. He was in exile in Babylon, and he had a broken heart because back in Jerusalem, his home country, where he in the moment couldn't get back to, it was falling apart. The wall that protected Jerusalem, the capital city of Israel, had fallen apart, and something drove Nehemiah inside to go, I've got to get back on focus and on task, what God has called me to do. And this is what we are told in the book of Nehemiah in the ancient Hebrew scriptures. He says, things are not going well for those who return to the province of Judah. They are in great trouble and they're in disgrace. So some Israelites had returned from Babylon after their exile, and they went back and things were going terrible for them. And they're getting beat up by all the surrounding, tribes and warlords and armies. And he says, the wall of Jerusalem has been torn down and the gates have been destroyed by fire. And this time, in this period of history, a wall around the city is what kept you safe. Now, modern days, walls don't matter because we have aircrafts and bombs and all the technology. But in this day, the wall mattered. And Nehemiah has a broken heart over it. And he has this thing that we talked about last week. He had a terrifying longing. And a terrifying longing is something in your soul where you just go, that's not right. Something has to be done about that. And for Nehemiah, it was his people. It was his country. It was, in fact, his walls around what protected the people he loved couldn't protect him. And he was heartbroken. And it fueled something, a focus that every day he woke up and just went, I've got to do something about this. What Nehemiah had is he had a problem, and he had a possibility, and he had a passion. He had a problem, because you know this. When there's a problem to solve in our world, it fuels us. And this really broke his heart. He loved his people so much. And I love this. This was not done so Nehemiah could be the king or the Lord over his people or in charge or have ruling power. He did it just because he loved his people. There was a possibility of Israel being restored to what they once were, or at least a part of what they once were. And he had a passion. I mean, it drove him, as we're about to see. And this is his famous statement that I think maybe we should adopt in our own personal life and when we figure out what's important to us. He said day after day, I'm doing a great work and I cannot come down. Just imagine Nehemiah, this picture, they're repairing the wall and he's in charge, he's got the authority, but he's up on the wall too. And he's got, mortar and he's got a hammer and he's putting the wall back together as the leaders with all the other people trying to get this wall back in place. And arrows are flying over and people are ridiculing him. And he just keeps saying, I'm not coming down. I will not be distracted. And over, the enemies of Nehemiah who wanted to conquer Jerusalem, they would try and entice him and invite him and woo him to come off that wall. We got a deal for you, Nehemiah. You just come down and we'll make this deal. And he says, no, I'm not coming off this wall. And he says this, why? And I love the question why. Pause there just for a moment. Because when you know the why when you wake up, or why you wake up, not just to get through the day and get a paycheck and try and get my kids to not get put in suspension, that whole deal. When you know the why of why you wake up, you get passionate about it. Why should the work stop while I leave it and come down to you? Guys, you're my enemies. It doesn't mean I hate you necessarily, but you're my enemies. You're trying to destroy us. You have a different agenda than I do. I've been called to something different. And you can threaten me and you can try and blackmail me. In fact, that's what they did. When they couldn't get him to come down just to meet over regular terms, they came up with a scheme to say, listen, we're gonna send word back to Cyrus in Babylon that Nehemiah, you're not here building a wall, you're putting together a rebellion. You're gathering troops. And Nehemiah, he was so focused, he wasn't even threatened by it. He just made this statement, there's no truth in any part of your story. You are making up the whole thing. I see so clearly about what I'm doing. You can't even distract me with blackmail. And he says there, we're just trying to intimidate us, imagining that they could discourage us and stop the work. And by the way, no one's stopping this work that I've been called to. So I continue, Nehemiah said, the work with even greater, and maybe this is a word for some of us we need to latch on to, determination. Greatest interesting thing, they tried to trick Nehemiah spiritually. If you read the whole book, which I hope you do, it's so interesting. They brought in an Israelite prophet to just persuade us, and he just was like, no, I'm not gonna be interrupted. I'm not gonna be distracted. And today I just want to talk a little bit about distractions. And if you've ever, it is really challenging to stay focused. A small sample of that for me was years and years ago when LifeHouse started. I was still kind of learning my speech. In the front row, there was this really kind, real mouth in the beginning of the message. She said, amen, like amen. Now you may notice this morning, might be mooers. You know what mooers are. I tell you this all the time. When someone sitting next to you agrees, they're they're mooing. That's all they're doing. Well, I say something, and this lady turned me on. And then I said another sentence, amen, amen, amen. It was matching me word for word with amens. And I'm smart enough to be interrupted and talk at the same time. It was my problem was with the mic. And so literally we're 5 minutes into it and I'm like, ma'am, I thank you so much for being, I didn't want to embarrass her. I couldn't go on. And I said this, I'm not smart enough to talk while you talk. So you're going to have to stop saying amen. And she was real kind about it and never came back. Anyway, but my great work in that moment, just in that moment, was what I was trying to communicate because it seemed really important to me. Distractions in an audience are really annoying. Like, I'm not picking on anybody, but like when you decide to videotape what's going on stage and you leave your light on, it's so annoying. Anyway, don't do that, please. It's not helpful to me at all. But that's for me. But you know this. Anything you're trying to do, there's distractions. Raise your kids, love Jesus, make your marriage strong. There's all these distractions that can come after you, and one thing after another can interrupt you. And what distractions can often do with our great work is they cause a fog in their life, where it's hard to see where I'm going. And what I started out with on this journey, and what my purpose and definition of my life is. And you all live in Ohio, we know this, because most, mornings in the fall, there's some version of this on the heavy mornings. The adults all cringe and the kids cheer. There's nothing better than seeing this when you're in 6th grade on a Monday morning. This is the best thing. But when this hits, you go into caution mode. You slow down or you don't go at all because there might be cars or people walking on the side of the road because it's dangerous to drive through fog in a car. Now, think about this in this terms. When you're trying to get your family somewhere and you're trying to be a cohesive unit and it's foggy, like just a pro tip from an old dad that got his kids through college and high school and middle school, like saying, hey, we're gonna have family dinner every night together, or at least 5 nights a week. We're gonna have family dinner together. And then the fog of activities and commitments and more sports, we're not gonna be able to do that. It gets real foggy. We're gonna be a family that shows up to church and we're gonna just do that together because we know in the end it's good for all of us. The fog sets in and it's hard to see through this. There's fog in your marriage. There's fog in your career. There may be fog in the personal mission that God has you on to affect our world. And fog's a problem. And when you have fog, what you gotta do is you gotta, face it. And see, the problem is not the fog. For Nehemiah, the problem was that wall. This is a really important thing to understand, for me at least. The fog is not the problem. I can work through the fog. The problem is when I forget what I was here for. And Nehemiah saw a problem. I gotta get to that wall and I gotta figure it out. The fog was all the criticism, all the things that seemed urgent, but they're not important. Let me just say that again. All the things in our lives that seem urgent, you gotta do, but they're really not important. The fog for you and I is criticism sometimes. Maybe your fog is regret. I'm doing a great work, but I still have so many regrets and guilt, and maybe for you, I hope you don't have this, but you might. Shame from your past becomes foggy. Other people's priorities distract you. And see, this is the enemy of God's great work in our lives. And some of that is just what we have in us. My own regrets are something that I conjure up myself because I'm a broken, sinful person. For some of us, it's people outside of us, and certainly some of us have experienced this from what we would call the evil one, where he likes to remind us of what we're not, even though that is a lie. Early in the days of LifeHouse, again, we grew really fast, and so a lot of people wanted to come and check out our church, and we had a great work. We saw the great work in Stephanie today, that we would invite people that were far from God, disenfranchised with church, hadn't been in church, were hurt by church, and invite them back and create an experience so they could be here and ask questions. And we were seeing it happen. What was interesting, and you may have heard me talk about this before, church people started to come from other churches because it was a cool thing to be a part of in those days. And this was what would happen continuously for about 3 years. Church people would say, hey, we're here. I'm going to invite some friends. And when you're trying to start a church, that sounds really appealing. Hey, and we're going to be consistent generosity givers to what's going on here. And when you're starting to start a church or maintain a church, you desperately need that. That's part of the church world. But we would like you to start doing, and there was always 2 things or 3 things. We want you to do this if you want us to keep coming. And what they were saying is, we want this church to be like our last church, but with our way, being taken into consideration. And I just remember this sense of, hey, we're doing a great work with LifeHouse. And if I do what you want us to do, the stories that we're hearing all the time are not going to happen, because you don't want us to be a church that unchurched people love to attend. And I'd have to say, no, we're not going to get distracted by that. You can hang out at our church, and I would have this conversation so honestly. You can hang out at our church, but you have to be on mission with us. And if you don't like our mission, you should find a church you want to be on mission with. And people left, and it was hard, but it was the great work, and we were not to be distracted. And see, the interesting thing is, with your family, your marriage, the thing you're doing in this world, your church, we usually don't get taken out by something. We get distracted by something. Love this quote. I'm convinced, David Brooks says, it is much easier for the enemy to keep us distracted than it is to take us out. Think about that. As a husband, I'm most likely not going to wake up tomorrow morning and go, listen, I'm just going to bail on my marriage and do something stupid today. Most of us don't do that. But what we do is we get distracted. We quit putting our marriage as a priority, our wife as a priority, our relationship as a priority, and then somewhere down the line, we've been so distracted, we forget about it, and then we do something really stupid that sometimes is unrepairable. Very few people wake up and go, I'm going to bail on my kids. I'm just going to bail on my kids. No, not many people do that. They just forget about their kids. They fill their schedule with other things. They fill their kids' schedule with other things. And now we're not spending time with our kids. And then one day you wake up, and we've all experienced this. You got an 18-year-old that's going off to college, and you miss the days that you had. You were distracted. I get distracted. In every part of our lives, this happens. Some of you, again, you get this personal mission that you're on in this world, and you're focused to do something good for Jesus and with Jesus. And your enemy's probably not going to be able to just take you out. And you probably won't take you out, but if you get distracted and ignore what God has called you to, that's a problem. So when it comes to the fog, you got to find a way to clear that out. Let me just give you a couple tips, and you do with this whatever you want. These are things that I've chosen to do along the way that I, got some wise mentorship. Sometimes you got to ignore your critics. Now, side note, that doesn't mean you don't listen to trusted people. You can't ignore everybody. You got to find some people that can speak into your life, but you got to ignore your critics. I mean, we're here today because we ignored a lot of critics along the way. For some of you, and this may feel offensive, you might need to distance yourself for some friends because they're causing fog in what you want to become and be a part of in your life. Not unlove them, not care about them, but some distance. For some of you, maybe this might be your biggest one. You just need to quit being on social media for a little while, or unfollow some people, or delete some apps. Because what happens with all those things and a whole bunch more to the great work God has set you on and I on, all those things can just cause a whole lot of fog. And you know what happens in fog? It gets real dangerous. You know what you do when you really got to get somewhere and it's foggy? You slow down. You turn off your high beams, you get real focused, you turn off the radio if you're smart, you look at your daughter and say, listen, I can't drive and listen at the same time. That must be an old man thing for me now. And you just get to where you're going and you do the next right thing. And you say, God, help me do the next right thing. That's what Nehemiah did. It's as simple as that. The distraction is the number 2 that came along from Nehemiah, we're told, is that some of the men and their wives raised a cry of protest against their food. We need more food to survive. And in Nehemiah's like, okay, we can handle that. Doable, we can accomplish that. But there were bigger problems, more food. Look where this goes. We have mortgaged our fields, our vineyards, and our famine. And other people say, it intensifies, vineyards to pay our taxes. Now, all of us can, taxes might be killing you, but Look at the next problem Nehemiah has to face. It's like this growing thing that's happening. We belong to the same family as those who are wealthy. And our children are just like their children. Yet we must sell our children into slavery just to get enough money to live. I don't have enough time to explain how this slavery system worked. It's different than we understand it, but it's still absolutely awful. So what's happened is it has escalated from we don't have enough food, there's too much debt, to we're selling our kids. Nehemiah, you have to do something. In this moment, Nehemiah, and it is so a little inconsistent with the story, he actually stops working on the wall for a moment to deal with this because he's got to do something. And in the middle of all these problems, he stops working on the wall and he says, I called a public meeting to deal with this problem. At the meeting, I said to them, we're doing all we can to redeem our Jewish relatives who have had to sell themselves to pagan followers. That's a really strong word. That just means non-Israelite followers. Because the outsiders outside of our tribe, they're leveraging all of our poverty and lowliness and lack of a wall, and they're just taking advantage of me. And Nehemiah decides, here's a solution to our problems, and he creates a vision for the entire community. But you, this is not just about me, but you all are selling them back into slavery again. How often must we redeem them? And they've had nothing to say in their defense. In other words, Nehemiah is saying, listen, you're charging each other as a community so much interest that it's crippling your friends, your family, and your neighbors. And we're Israel, we're the children of God. And those of you that are doing that, you already have enough. I want you to start repaying interest that you've taken from your neighbors because their kids are in slavery. And I can't be the only one that carries this vision. It's why one of my primary jobs at LifeHouse is not just to do the stuff, but encourage you to come along with us. This is literally why we are doing Be Rich, because when we all get together, we can do a great work in our community. And Nehemiah says, here's what I want you to do. I want you to give your stuff to each other. Now, you may think, well, this sounds like some version, and let me get through all this before you judge what I'm going to say, of socialism or communism. I would suggest it's nothing of the kind. This is people choosing by their own accord. There's no laws, there's no government that are making them do this. This is people choosing by their own accord to care, to love. The wall is super important, but the people are what really matter. The wall was there just to protect the people. I think about our great work as a church, and again, why we're supporting all the students. Yeah, we want to do cool things, but we know kids have needs, and we know the community needs to view the church as something that is for them, not against them. And Nehemiah, in the middle of this, chooses to deal with the fires that are popping up around him. It's a little bit more intense than the fog. He has to cast vision to put these fires out, to give up some of yours for your neighbor so no one has to be sold back into slave. Because you know this, a small campfire, when it's unattended, turns into a raging forest fire overnight. And it seems like it's impossible when God has called us to do something that is absolutely possible. And for Nehemiah, it was to build that wall. The people were the goal, not just the wall. But here's the problem. When you're trying to do a great work in your family or your own personal life or in your marriage or a business and fires pop up, you have to deal with that. The challenge is if you don't deal with it earlier than later, it can get out of hand. I love the sprinkler system we have in this building. We had to have it when we moved in, so we were fortunate it was already here. I didn't know this about sprinkler systems, but each sprinkler head, because in the movies, you know how this goes when the sprinkler system goes off, all of them go off because it's funny and everything gets washed. And each one of these sprinkler heads, and I'll explain this wrong, there's some kind of wax substance that when each one gets hot enough, the wax melts and the water comes out of that one sprinkler head. And you get the idea because when you have a little bit of smoke, you only need a little bit of water. And you don't want to drench the entire building because of one little piece of flame in one part of the building. But if you don't get that one part contained and it spreads, every sprinkler comes on and the place is ravaged by fire, water, and smoke. And before this thing gets out of hand and it's impossible to course correct, Nehemiah decides, I'm going to deal with that. I'm going to deal with that quickly. I'm going to choose to put it out. And what is it for you? For you, the fire that's going to keep you from your great work, and it could be for me too, is a personal behavior that's developing in you that no one knows about. I know it's real personal. And you're like, that's not a big deal, but you've watched it be a big deal for somebody else. You watched it be a big deal for your dad. And he said it wasn't a big deal, but it undermined your family. Maybe for you, it's an addiction. Maybe for you, it's just the fact you don't listen or love well, or you're not able to say, I'm sorry. I was, big word for some of us, wrong. Maybe it's a behavior if you're starting a new business that God's called you to do to leverage for greater work than yourself. It's discipline habits. It's getting up early. It's working hard. And here's the beauty of it. When it's small, it's not hard to put out or course correct, but when you let it rage and get out of hand and it rages everywhere, it's really hard to get a handle on. And Nehemiah just says, I'm coming off the wall just for a minute. I'm coming off the wall because I'm fixing this problem, and I need you to help me do this. And they did. They rebuilt the wall in the end. They didn't give up together on it. But there was a third enemy, and maybe the hardest one that Nehemiah had to face, because this happens. They all made plans to come and fight against Jerusalem and throw us into confusion. So now we're talking about all these warring tribes, warlords, other armies. They're all coming against us. Now, what's interesting for Nehemiah, that I'm not sure everyone has this gear, so you just got to acknowledge this. The people were afraid of all these warriors outside of Jerusalem. Nehemiah was like, bring it. You just bring it. He seemed to be somewhat immune to it. I don't know if it was just his trust in God. He just seemed to not be very scared about it. But the people that were with him on the inside were terrified. Because this is what we're told then. The people of Judah began to complain. The workers are getting tired, and there is so much rubble to be moved. We'll never be able to build the wall by ourselves. It's so interesting that you have trouble rising outside the walls, and in that moment, people that have been working hard, getting a lot accomplished, getting stuff done, all of a sudden they start to complain. It was so interesting. This is getting really hard. And another side note, you all know this, but anything good in our life is typically hard, because hard is hard, but it leads to better things. Anyway, people are grumbling because it's gotten hard, but there's something else going on, because Nehemiah, he says, meanwhile, people are tired and they're scared and they're not sure if we can finish this thing. And another thing happens. Meanwhile, our enemies were saying, before they know what's happening, we will swoop down on them and we will kill them and end their work. And Nehemiah just sees right through this. And he realizes there's something happening outside the walls that are affecting the people inside the wall. Something's going on, and Nehemiah, he's so crystal clear on the mission, he can still see clearly. And it's the last distraction, what's happening to the people inside the walls. It's fear. Fear is distracting them. Fear is keeping them from being what they're supposed to be. And you know this, fear, it has the potential to paralyze us. You got an iron will that you're like determined to get done what you feel like you're called to do in this life, and then you get afraid, and fear just melts our world and our will along the way. It's why there's this really interesting thing that's popping up all over the place right now with young people, but it's happening with adults. It's anxiety. I was talking with one of the physicians that goes to our church this week. He said there is unprecedented, listen to this, unprecedented levels of election anxiety going on right now. People are scared to death of an election. And I know right now you want to send me a link to a website so I watch why we should be afraid. Don't send that to me, please. I will not watch it. We're afraid, but we have a king that holds the whole world in his hands. We're afraid, but we still believe Jesus sits on the throne, and there's just anxiety. And part of the reason why there's anxiety is because everything that is news gets, posted and reposted and socialized and social media'd up, and we just can't get away from it. There is a growing level of fear. And it's not just fear of elections and what's going out there. There's fear of me when I have a mission in my life. Again, to be a husband, to be a dad, to do my job and your job. Here's my fear some days, and you may not believe this happens in my life because sometimes I present myself more than I am. I live with a constant fear of inadequacy. I don't think I'm good enough to get on this stage and talk to you all. I don't think I'm going to do it right. I'm going to be embarrassed. I'm going to fall apart. I'm going to fail. I'm going to miss the mark. I'm going to be left out. People are going to, literally, my daughter got me these new shoes. You may have seen, we went to the Pink concert last weekend. She made me wear these different shoes. It's pretty funny. Get the party started. That's what I keep singing all in my head over and over and over again. And I'm like, what if somebody makes fun of my shoes? I feel like I'm a stinking middle schooler at times. Do you ever feel that way? Here's what we know. Fear kills. And what it kills is the life you've been invited to in Jesus, who said, I've come to give you life and life abundantly. Fear kills vision for our lives. Proverbs says, without vision, people die. And you know this, if you can't see clearly, we die in our relationships, in the churches that we love, in the country that we love. And here's what interesting thing is happening as the level of fear rise in our country. This is what people's go-to thing is with fear in our world right now, is protect, secure, secure. It's why I think we probably have this overwhelming amount of cancel culture, because if I disagree with you, I'm just gonna be so afraid of your viewpoint that I'm gonna cancel you. As opposed to, hey, you vote your way and I'll vote my way, let's have coffee and just talk and be friends. I don't have to cancel you. I'm not so afraid of an election I can't talk to a family member or friend or a child or a son that's in college that needs to have time with me. And it's all across the board. I'm afraid of going outside, so let's just stay inside. I'm afraid of talking to people, so let's not talk to anybody. Scientists literally have said when it comes to fear, the best way to deal with fear in our world is to expose yourself appropriately to what you're afraid of. Isn't that interesting? To expose yourself in steps to what you're afraid of, not just protect and not just secure. And Nehemiah realized our people are afraid. They're not grumbling because the work's hard, they're grumbling because they're afraid. So I called together the nobles and the rest of the people and said to them, do not be afraid of the enemy. And I read this and I thought, that's not helpful. You ever been afraid and someone says, don't be afraid? That's not helpful at all. But what he says next is incredible. He said, next slide, remember the Lord, who is great and glorious and fights for you and your brothers, your sons and your daughters, your wives and your homes. And this phrase, your Lord who is great and glorious, man, that made an impression upon me. What are you more afraid of? Are you afraid of your enemies? Or are you afraid of being far apart from a Lord and God that loves you, who's great and glorious? Which fear are you going to choose? Am I going to be afraid of an election? What's going to happen tomorrow? Am I going to be afraid of things I can't control? Or am I going to be terrified of being separated from a God who's great and glorious? Nehemiah knew as long as he was connected to his great and glorious God, they would figure out a way to get through it. Not that it wouldn't be hard, that there wouldn't be pain and loss, but the great and glorious God wins every time. And he's with us, and he loves us, and ultimately he gave his son to bring us back to him. I'll just say to you, if you feel like you've lost your passion or you're afraid, maybe we should be afraid of just being distanced. Not afraid of God, but be afraid of being distanced from our great and glorious God when we're with him. I love this. We fight for our brothers and sisters, and we love and we forgive, and we do the great work in our families that we're called to do. Because when it comes to this, fear trumps passion every time if we let it get out of control. Fear, and again, yours might be, I want to have a good marriage. I want to love my kids well. You might be like me and thinking, I'm looking at the next 20 years of my life. I want to finish well. I want my church to thrive, but I'm so afraid. No, I want to just stomp fear out because I got a great and glorious God. For some of you, it might be, listen, I want a name that has credibility. And right now, my name doesn't have credibility. I was just pondering this thought for some people that come to our church. I want when someone mentions my name, think that's a credible, trustworthy guy, and right now you're not. Fear will keep you from giving your name credibility, but if you decide, no, I'm staying on the passion for what God has called me to be, eventually God will restore your name. Not just to make you great, but no, hey, Jesus has done something in that person's life. And Nehemiah, this is my great work. In every season of his life, chose not to come down. I would just tell you, in every season of my life as a pastor, and I've been doing this for a long time, every season I had to fight fear off. Every season I had to go, no, I'm not gonna let that take hold of me. God has called us to a great work as a church, to me as a dad, as a husband, as a friend. I am doing a great work. I can't come down. And I just wanna say this to you. God created you to do something important in this world. And your name may never be famous, but it might be famous to someone or important to someone because how you loved and how you cared and how you gave your life away. So I just would suggest when it comes to fear, you got to root it out. You can't let it kill your passion. And here's the thing about fear and rooting it out. It's not what's on the surface. It's what's underneath. It's not the easy things that we all complain about. You know, the things that we complain about that we can't really change. We love to complain about things in other parts of the country, in Washington, because you know this and I know this. I can't really change them. So we spend all of our time worrying and complaining about those things versus maybe I can deal with what's going on inside my heart, which is I'm just afraid. I'm afraid of what I won't have or what I won't be. And it's led me simply to a distraction. So I just wanted to give you 3 quick questions. And when I put all 3 of these up at the end, you might want to take a picture of it so you can think about it, maybe pray about it if you want. You don't have to. But 3 distractions that may be the thing that you need to ponder of what's taking you off course. The first distraction is what's clouding your view right now. What's clouding your view of the great work God has called you to be? The non-essential things that, listen, would you be willing to dismiss the non-essentials for what matters most? So you can know, hey, I have a problem to solve and I want a better future for my kids. My dad was a lousy dad. I refuse to be a lousy dad. My family didn't follow Jesus, so I'm gonna make sure our family, we're gonna follow Jesus. This is gonna be a part of what we're doing. I'm gonna love my wife. I'm gonna be generous. I'm gonna be kind. Whatever it is, what's clouding your view of it? What's getting in the way? What's confusing you from your clear vision for your life? The second is what's threatening your vision? What feels dangerous right now, but you're allowing to have happen? What fires, remember the fires, are going on in your behavior, some other behavior, and you and I have chosen not to look that way? I'm not gonna pay attention, but right now it's just small. But you know if you don't deal with that fire, it's gonna blow up. Maybe it's an addiction. Maybe if it's what you're doing personally, maybe it's what someone in your household or your business is doing, and you don't like confrontation, so you don't wanna talk about it, but you know you gotta deal with your fires. And maybe for some of you, and I don't have time to explain this very deep, so you just have to trust me on this. I just need to confess some stuff to somebody. The fires are my fires. I need to tell somebody. Because if I don't tell somebody, this might burn up the things that matter most to me. What's threatening your vision? And lastly, what's paralyzing your will? What are you afraid of right now? And I know that's hard. And women, I'm sure this is hard for you. For men, us to admit we're afraid is terrifying. Like telling your grown kids, Dad loves you. Well, I've never said that. Why have you never said that? Well, it's not natural. No, it's not natural. You're freaking afraid. And I get it. Don't be afraid. Men and women, you're all included. Men, your kids desperately need to hear you love them and you care about them and need to hear about your faith and you need to get past your fear, because it's a good work you're doing. And at the end of your life, it will not matter how much money you made or how successful you are. The people that sat around the table with you, the people you rubbed shoulders with, the people you sat in this auditorium and served and loved kids in our community, that is the great work we've been called to. And when you are reminded what you aren't, when you are reminded that you can't, when you're reminded of your screw-ups and your failures and your regrets and all the sin of your past, and man, I got lots. I just hope you will remember that you are God's handiwork. He created you for something significant in this world. And if it never gets past who you loved around the table in your house, that is the biggest win of your life. What's your great work? And is something clouding your view? Is something threatening your vision? Is something paralyzing your will with fear? I just hope, my prayer for you, my prayer for me and my own children and our church is we would find out God's great work in our lives and we would go after it with clear vision. And anytime we get a little off track, we don't succumb to that. We just bring it back and ask for God's help. And if you're here this morning and listen, you've come off a season or a weekend of being off track, all God cares about is that you are leaning back towards him. It's all he cares about, because he cares for you and he made you for a great work in this world. And listen, this may not mean anything to you. I believe in you. And I believe in you because this should mean something to you, because God believes in you, because he created you and he's with you and he'll empower you to do his great work in your life. So let's do it. Let's live intentionally with every day of our lives. Let me pray for you. Heavenly Father, I am so glad that I have experienced watching other people live out their great work in this church and people I've known along the way, and my own father. I'm so grateful for that. I pray that every human being that is listening today or watching, Lord, that we would grab on to the great work you've called us to, and we would be relentless in following that. When the fog happens, let us just gear down and walk through the fog towards the thing we're supposed to be. When the fires pop up, let us deal with those appropriately. And when fear takes hold and we're told we're too weak, we're too dumb, not important enough, that we would be reminded we are your children, created to do a great work in this world. Thanks for loving us so well, Jesus. And thanks for Nehemiah and the story of that wall that teaches us so very much. We love you and we're grateful that you love us. In your name I pray. Amen. Thanks for being here today. Love you all. Have a great rest of your week.